Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Visibility Era. I'm Bridget Sisko. I'm here with my co-host today, Lydia Bagarosa, and we're going to be interviewing Jessica Walrack. And I'm going to do a little intro for Jessica because this is the first time we've ever had a finance writer on the show. So if anyone here is a financial analyst, a financial planner, maybe you're even in money mindset, you need to tune into this episode because we're going to be learning so much about the behind the scenes writing from Jessica. So here's a little intro. Jessica is a freelance writer with over a decade of experience who now specializes in finance-related content, writing, and journalism. You can find her work regularly featured on USA Today, US News and World, CBS News, Investopedia, Credible, the New York Post, amongst others. How cool. Jessica is also the founder of All Things Freelance Writing, which is a community that helps freelance writers build their ideal businesses through blog, forum, jobs boards, and just like the community, which is what we learned from you before we started. So welcome, Jessica. Hey, Lydia, how are we doing today?
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to have you on the show. And it's so funny. I just had a tooth removed this week and talking is really funny and hard for me right now. So this is hilarious that I'm introing Jessica. I'm like, bah, 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 bah.
You can't tell at all.
You can't tell at all. You're doing great, Bridget.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is the real talk. So finance writing, I think where we really wanted to start with you today is how in the world did you get into finance writing? Because we think of that and we're like, is it fun? How do you make it interesting? So I'd love for you to share just a little bit of your story and how you got into this industry. It's so niche.
Yeah. So I started just as a generalist and pretty much did every type of writing you can imagine. Just feeling out the space and seeing what was out there and what was available. I was really passionate about travel and health. I think a lot of people are drawn to those niches. They're exciting and really interesting. And I did write for them for a while. And part of my story is that my family traveled abroad for the first 7 years of my business too. So I was just kind of writing, doing things, but also traveling and busy in my life. But we moved back about 3 years ago and I started getting more serious about growing my business. And I looked over all the jobs that I had done over the years and kind of what I liked best, what was in the highest demand, what paid the best. And finance just really stood out. And I never expected that I would enjoy it, but I did. And it's really, I think a lot of people have kind of a negative connotation towards it. Like it's these old men in a room over here that are boring talking about it, but it's really integral to every part of our lives, from survival to like putting food on the table and having a house, so all the things that we want to achieve in our lives revolve around money. And so all of these articles that I write, it comes back to some underlying concern that people are trying to resolve in their lives, which once you find that engaging point and see the people behind it, it becomes a lot more interesting, I think.
Yeah. Most of our audience members are millennials. And I think a lot of us are getting into this space where if we haven't already, we're like, ooh, we need to actually worry about our finances or learn how to make money for our retirement. What does that look like? So I would love to hear, and even with the financial climate right now, things are a little uncertain. We had, a little bit of a downturn. So I would love to hear from you what kind of topics you've been talking about right now. And have you seen a huge spike in traffic? Like I personally have been really invested, ooh, play on words, invested in, so corny, invested in learning about ways that I can put away money, different types of stock options and things like that. So I would love to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, and I don't really get to see the analytics for the sites that I write for, so I'm not sure how their traffic has been. But I do see the topics, and this year it's been a lot about interest rates, of course. People are wondering when they're going to go down, what's going on, especially after the craziness we had in the housing market throughout the pandemic.
Yeah.
People who didn't quite get in and didn't get to buy, they're kind of might be sitting there like, how long is this going to last? How long are the interest rates going to be high? And then also inflation, of course, everybody's budgets are pinched. So there's a lot of topics about, which grocery stores are the cheapest, how can you make the most of your money right now? Where should you be investing in down markets and that kind of stuff? So you definitely can feel the concerns that are going on with people and the answers that they're looking for.
Yeah. And a lot of things we talk about inside Pitch Party, which is our flagship program, and Visibility on Purpose, is talking about topics that are timely and how we can contribute to the value really for these publications. So question, because you're on the other side, we are helping people come up with story angles. I'm a publicist myself and I have my own agency, so I'm pitching story angles all the time. But do you come up with, this is like a good question, do you come up with story angles, or are you kind of working with publicists, or are you working with brands that kind of pitch you ideas? Like, how does that work for you in terms of being a writer and contributing to these types of topics?
Yeah, all of the relationships that I have, they come up with topics each month that they want us to write on. And then I'll reach out to my network of experts or put out a request on Harrow or Quoted or Twitter, looking for somebody to, help me and contribute, someone who's a subject matter expert. But most of them also ask if I have any ideas or pitches that would be timely that I could submit. And sometimes I do, sometimes I'll send some in, but for the most part, I'm pretty busy with what they send me.
Yeah. So that's more assigned pieces then, which is like, it's so funny because it's such a mix. There are assigned pieces. So there's like the editorial teams that come in and they say, hey, to the writers, we want to talk about this, find sources, whatever. Then there's freelance writers that I work with that are pitching story angles that I'm coming up with a lot to their editors. And so there's a lot of moving pieces. Like, we tell a lot of people that are interested in getting into the media or working with writers, there's a lot of things going on. We're liaisons, like we're pitching story angles, they're getting assigned pieces, then there's holidays, then there's things we need to cover. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but what I like about that is that there's so many opportunities along with all of these different moving pieces. So I would love to ask you, what is your favorite place to get experts? We teach Harrow in our containers. And then we've recently been using Quoted a little bit, and that's been fun. I know a lot of writers are like hot on Twitter, which is now X or whatever. Like, I think if you type in Twitter, we can still use Twitter.
What about Connectively? I was just saying to Lydia that Harrow is like completely, looks like it's changing. So yeah, where are people connecting with you?
Yeah, so I really do like Harrow. I've been using it for years, and it seems like there's never a shortage of pitches. My main complaint with it would be that there's just so many pitches and a high amount of them are spam. I get a lot of AI stuff. Just like,
wait, this is the first time we're hearing about this.
Yeah, what do you mean? Tell more.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, so people are, because as you know, once you're mentioned in these articles, it helps with your authority. And a lot of people are hoping to get backlinks, which is going to help their SEO on their site. So I see a ton, probably 20%. I would say I get 50 to 100 pitches probably, and about 20% are digital marketing managers for unrelated experts. So they're just chiming in, telling me information on whatever I'm talking about, but they're not experts at all. And then I'll get a lot of pitches from like, I mean, it's almost funny, from like an aquarium shop owner or like a shoe shop owner, and they want to tell me about investing in gold. And it's like, I can get all the general information myself. What I need is somebody who's really an expert on the ground in this industry that can give me details, So I do have to sort through a lot of stuff on there now, but I'm still getting what I need, more so than anywhere else. So I do still use it quite a bit. And then I recently started using Quoted, which is a little bit more filtered. They have people in there who are kind of facilitating the connections and making sure you're getting what you need, which I appreciate. And then I have people who, mostly that I found through Harrow, that follow up with me and they're like, hey, I'd be really excited and happy to help you in the future. These are my areas of expertise. Feel free to reach out to me on any pieces. And so I'll reach out to those people too when it's a good fit.
Yeah.
So interesting.
What? So interesting. And I've actually heard this from quite a few of my writer friends where they're like, I love Harrow when I'm in a pinch. Like I have a deadline in 2 days and I need to get a source for this. But every once in a while I have the aquarium person that's like, hey, I know about gold. And you're like, okay, this is cute, but like, are you a financial advisor? No. Like, are you an expert in gold? No. So it's super interesting how people want to chime in. And something we talk about a lot in Visibility on Purpose as well is really just like, do you make sense? Are you adding value? And like anticipating needs as well. So is there anything where when when sources are coming to you and they're like kind of answering your question, but you're like, oh, I think that they'd be a good source for this. Is there any like back and forth that may be like frustrating or even like a positive thing for, as a writer in your experience?
Yeah, I would say, a lot of times I am on tight deadlines. I have a piece each day and I need to get the pitches in, the good ones, and get them in there and keep moving. And so I always put that in my pitch requirements. Send your quote on this with your pitch. And I put pretty specific questions, so I usually get what I need from it. But some people do just say, hey, I'm an expert in this. Email me if you want to learn more. And unless I've, for some reason, didn't get any responses, which is very rare, I'm never going to email that person because of the time constraint, So I would say just including a quality answer in your pitch. And before this interview, I went through a bunch of my pitches just to kind of see, okay, what is it that exactly is getting me to choose these pitches? And I made a little list of just like a few key things that really stand out when I'm going through and end up getting people. So I can share that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
That is perfect. Yeah.
That was the next question, Jessica.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
Perfect. So totally aligned.
Let's see. So the generic pitches, basically, the articles already cover the bases. So what we need is extra, something that's going to add icing on the cake, that's really going to bring the article to life from somebody who's in it. Because as much as I know the landscape, I'm not in it every day, helping people invest their money or doing these things. So let's see, I have a list of 4 or 5 here. So illustrative stories are really great. So somebody's just sharing their actual experience, maybe working with a client or investing, and the result that they got that's very specific provides a lot of value to the reader. And then advanced strategies or insights that you're not going to just find out across the web as general knowledge are really helpful. Actionable tips, so things that people can take and act on right away. And informed opinions or predictions and the reasoning behind it. So as I mentioned earlier, I recently did some work on interest rates dropping, and people want to know, when are they going to drop? Are the Fed rates going to rise again? What's it going to look like the rest of the year? How should they be planning? And so I had some financial experts chime in and make very detailed predictions about what they think for the rest of this year, what they think is going to happen next year, when people might be able to start getting back into the housing market, all of these very detailed predictions. So those are like, yes, gold. This is exactly what the readers want to know. So
I love that you looked at your past pitches and like wrote them down. That was music to our ears. I mean, this is super helpful for, our community, because they're really asking themselves, how do I stand out? How can I provide value? How can I make sure that this writer knows that I am an expert? Because I think what I'm also hearing is you're getting a lot of pitches or responses to Harrows that aren't experts, and they don't know. properly, communicate with the media, which that wastes your time. And now that there's more AI in the mix, it's like you're now we should come up with a software, all of us guys, that could cut through the AI BS to help writers.
Yeah. And it's very obvious. I mean, I can't even tell you when you're just going through it, it's just humans, they bring a different energy. You can feel it in the first 1 to 2 lines. That's like, this is or isn't, somebody who knows what they're talking about. So,
yeah. And I love how you kind of took your own advice accidentally. You were like, what do people want to hear in an article? They want to hear tips. They want to hear like personal opinions, blah, blah, blah. And then you literally took that into this podcast episode. You're like, okay, how can I provide value? Which was so good. So good. And it's really thinking outside of the box of like, what's actually going to help people. It's like leading with this value piece, which we love so much because that's what people are here for. They're here for the value. And that just like helps our listeners, like what Bridget said. So I want to pivot a little bit to your other company, all freelance. Okay, wait.
All things freelance writing.
All things freelance writing. Yeah. Can you please tell us about this? Like, did you create a community of writers or people kind of interested and you're like, all right, I see the need. Here's what we're going to build out. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So I had been freelancing. I've been doing it for about 10 and a half years. And in the early years, I struggled a lot. I had trouble filling my pipeline, getting clients, dealing with late payments, dealing with endless edit reviews. There's just so many things that can go wrong in writing. It's very nuanced. And so you have to find the right clients and have everything moving well for it to be profitable and for it to last. And so once I kind of really got my business squared away and felt like this is exactly my dream business, I started getting involved on LinkedIn, networking with other writers, kind of sharing my experience. And that was the first time. I'd been on an island for 7 to 8 years trying to figure this all out on my own.
Wait, what island? Wow. Where were you?
Actually, I was actually on an island, but I meant like a.
Oh, Bridget, I'm like Bridget, I'm pretty sure. I'm sitting here like Bridget. All right.
No, I was living in Cozumel, but I just didn't have like a community, So once I started meeting other writers, it just really helped me because they spoke the same language. It's okay. And could relate in so many ways that, I can't talk to really my friends or my family about a lot of things in my business because they just don't understand where I'm coming from really. And so that really, I got a warm welcome, I would say, on LinkedIn, met a lot of people, started getting a lot of questions in my DMs all the time, more than I could answer. And so I'm like, okay, I need to figure out some kind of resource where I can direct people to say, hey, here's the answer to that. Here's where you can find that. And I just really wanted to help people to not go through all the struggles I went through to get to that point where they're afloat faster. So I started writing a course, and then it kind of dawned on me in that process that if I could have a resource where lots of people were sharing their advice, not just me, it would be a more comprehensive, thorough resource that could help more people, because just my knowledge alone isn't going to be able to help everybody. And so that seed grew into All Things Freelance Writing last February. I started with a blog, and I invited some of my established writers that I knew really well to come and write and share on a topic that they felt was their expertise. And it's just kind of grown and evolved since then. And I found that what's the thing that people need most that are trying to write? They need jobs. And so we developed the job board. And that's become pretty much the main magnet. We have every Friday we post at least 20 open calls for writers from around the web. And then we send it out in an email also to our email list. And so that's been growing, and we have a directory and a podcast, just one season so far, but we're hoping to do another one in the future. So yeah, it's just been kind of this thing that's taken on a life of its own.
Yeah. And, it brings us back to something that Lydia and I talk about all the time, which is relationships, connection, and community, because it's like of course we can do this whole business thing on our own. We know we can, but it is way more fun doing it in the community of other people. And like you said, sharing resources, because you might know a lot about finance writing, but maybe there's someone who has a question about something else, and then you could have another expert help them there. So I just love that. Is this community all over the world? Like, where have most of the people gathered from?
Yeah, it is. It's global. I love looking at the map on my analytics and just seeing all the countries lit up around the world. It's so cool. But yeah, the number one is the US naturally.
Yeah.
But the UK, Canada, Nigeria, and India are the top 5.
It's a
Wow.
question that people in our community ask a lot. We also have students from all over the world, and we have had people ask the question of, is pitching only for like US based business owners? So I'd love to hear, like, are there any things that are different around media across the world that you've noticed?
I was just thinking the other day how cool it is that you can just go on and apply for a job in Australia or anywhere. There's every week on the job board we have opportunities from all over, and I think they're starting to even out and become more uniform. The longer and the more connected everybody is, everyone's getting closer to the same page, I would say, but there's definitely still some disparity between different countries and what's available. We recently did a freelancer rates report. So we surveyed 346 writers to find out what they're getting paid and where the rates are and everything. And so that was interesting to see. The US had the highest rates still. Global rates were a little bit lower when looking at them all together. But they are coming up. I'm seeing a lot more people who are able to command higher rates, and people are judging it based on their writing quality, not just based on where they're from, which in the past was a big problem. But yeah, I would say most of the publications they're looking for the same things. They just want something that's going to help the reader as much as possible and engage their audience.
Yeah. So one of the hottest things I hear from entrepreneurs, and I don't know if you have the answer, but one of the hottest things I hear is that they want to eventually get a column somewhere at a big publication. And I would love to hear your perspective on potentially getting a column. I think where this stems from is a lot of our clients are personal brands. And so they'll see like a big personal brand like Oprah's, life coach or whatever, and they have columns on these big publications. And so they think they don't know how to get it. So I would love to hear if you have any perspective on gaining columns and what that kind of looks like, because from my perspective, I don't really know how to do that, just like full transparency. But what I've found is that you're not only up against maybe like names, but you're up against writers who have been working towards this their whole lives to like get columns. So I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not really sure. I haven't really come across that much anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's like an old school dream that when you think of these big names like Oprah or Deepak or I don't know, all like the big, we work with a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in the self-development space, but I would imagine there are some like financial people that are really big too, that have columns at like Forbes and other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My main goal was to get on the site,
Yeah.
get on their pages with the companies. So I hadn't really thought about my own column yet, but that could be a good next goal.
Well, and I'm happy that I brought it up. So what is next for Jessica? Like, what are you working on? I would love to hear how we could support you or how our community can work with you, and any goals that you have for your own business too.
Yeah. Right now I'm really happy with my finance writing. I pretty much write 4 to 5 articles per week. So I'd like to continue doing that. And then with the all things freelance writing, it's been a big investment of time and energy to get this thing rolling over the past year and a half, especially doing it mostly on my own. I do have, freelancers that I've brought in and partnerships, but it's my baby. So I'm the only one that's there, like making sure that things are still going. So yeah, I have some goals for that to grow and expand, to bring in more sponsorships and more partners, and continue to grow just the community that's around it and the resources that we're able to provide. I'd like to do a lot more on the blog, to launch some courses. I have a marketplace kind of idea in mind where we can also post courses from other writing experts on there for our community. So yeah, just plugging away at that and excited to see how it goes.
Amazing. We'll have all of this in the show notes. So if you're listening with us or live with us, this will be posted on Visibility Era podcast. And if you don't know, now you know, we always go live in our Facebook group and do that first. So if you want to ask questions with the host, or you just want to engage a little bit earlier, you can always join our Facebook group. But Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been so much fun to learn your side. Last question. I saw the typewriter in the background and I just have to know what's going on with that. Like, do you type on it, or is it more of just a beautiful piece to have in the office?
I do actually. I've gone through a couple of them, and that's actually a fully manual one. So it's so much fun to just sit, and sometimes I'll use it to type out birthday letters to friends or family, just something kind of personal and fun.
That's so sweet.
And you actually have to put the ink in there and go, and it's so hard. And just thinking about how people used to have to type that way. And if you ever make a mistake, you have to get the whiteout thing and go through and fix it. And it's just kind of a trip down memory lane. And then it has a little bell when you like do the thing to start on a new line and everything.
New line.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
That's so cool. Well, we're so grateful that you could be here today. Why don't you end with a couple of places that people can find you? Where are you most active? How can people get to know you better?
I would say LinkedIn is the best place. I usually post there a few times a week and just share what's going on, and also things that I've learned in my story and different things about my journey. So that's probably the best place. But I am also on Instagram and Twitter/X.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here today. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us on another episode of Visibility Era, the podcast.